Eventually, after close to 10 years as a performer, I discovered something that changed everything for me. When I started treating color guard like a real sport and had access to train for it intentionally in the gym and outside of rehearsal, my performance capabilities completely changed. I became stronger, more confident, and I realized there were so many performers that were struggling the same way I did. They also didn't have access to the fitness guidance they needed to be successful in color guard. That's why I created Spin Strong. My goal with Spin Strong is to help performers and instructors approach color guard training differently than we have the last 50 years. Through experience and education-based fitness, strength training, mobility work, injury prevention, and sustainable performance strategies that actually support what we do from people who've done it before. So far, we've helped lots of people approach their training in a better, more informed way, and it makes my heart happy to see those who've been able to achieve more because of what we've offered. But this summer, I want to take that one step further. At Spin Strong, I don't want to just talk about the training process to get better at color guard. I want to live it with you. I want performers to see how my advice can help them achieve their goals and be living proof that with the right knowledge and practices, you can accomplish anything. So over the next 4 months, I'm putting myself through the same challenge so many performers dream about, and so many adults think that they're too old to try again. At 33 years old, I will be auditioning for an independent world guard for the 2027 WGI season. Thank you all for coming back to my series where I show you how I'm working towards my goal of earning a spot on a world-class winter guard team. In today's video, I'm breaking down exactly how I'm training for that goal and the reasonings behind making those choices. Now, I organize my training based on what I call pillars. I've talked a lot about these pillars before and how I believe color guard performers should incorporate them into their training. Today, I'm going to go deeper into what those pillars actually look like and how I'm incorporating them into my program. Before we jump in, I do want to make one thing clear. This isn't meant to be the blueprint that I think everyone should copy exactly. We all have different schedules, life responsibilities, experience levels, and training areas we need to improve on. My plan works for my life and my goals. So if you can't commit to going to the gym as often as I do, or you have to work a lot more than I do, I don't want you to be discouraged and feel like you can't apply these pillars for yourself and fit it into your own schedule. I think the framework for these pillars can be organized and adjusted really easily depending on where you need it to fit into your life. Maybe you'll see my training plan and like how I've structured my week and adapt parts of it for your benefit. Or maybe this video simply helps you realize there's an area of your training you've been overlooking. Whatever the reason, the goal for you isn't to train exactly like me and follow this schedule precisely. It's to help inform you of the different components that I think are necessary for color guard training, and to give you a better idea of where to start on your training plan if you're having trouble coming up with a solid, doable structure for yourself. So let's get into it. Before I tell you what my training plan actually looks like, I want to give you some context about the life that I'm building it around, because I think this is something that we just don't talk about enough when it comes to getting better at color guard. Your training plan doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists inside your actual life. For me, there are things about my current circumstances that make auditioning for a world-class group like this possible in ways that a few years ago it wouldn't have been. I am 33 now. I have more experience. I have more knowledge about my body. I have more resources. I understand training and recovery in ways that I just didn't when I was in my 20s. But I also have a completely different set of responsibilities outside of color guard. I have a job, I teach, I have rehearsals. I have other things that matter to me outside of color guard, and my body doesn't recover the way it did when I was in my 20s. So I can't just decide that I'm going to train harder and think that that's enough. I have to be intentional about how I spend my time, how I recover, how I watch what I eat, how I sleep, how I manage my stress, and how I can realistically incorporate working for that goal into my life. And your circumstances might look completely different from mine. Maybe you're in college, maybe you work full-time, maybe you have a ton of time to practice, maybe you don't have any time to practice. But whatever your circumstances are, they are part of your plan. Because once you stop thinking of color guard as something you do once you walk into rehearsal, and you start thinking about how to become that exceptional performer, your relationship with the rest of your life starts to change. Your sleep matters, your nutrition matters, your recovery matters, your stress matters. The way you spend the 3 hours before rehearsal matters. And so do all of the little decisions we make on the days that we don't have rehearsal at all. It's a very different goal setting than just saying, I want to work out more, I want to eat healthier. Those are good goals, but they're just broad enough where you'll be pursuing them passively or maybe just when it's convenient. What I'm talking about here is different. You have to get really specific about what you want to achieve. I want to be better at guard doesn't tell you exactly what you need to change, but I want to be physically capable of performing at a world-class level does. And once you define that goal specifically, you can start asking better questions. What does my body need to be able to do? What do I need to practice? How much recovery do I need? What do I need to prioritize? How do I include that into my already busy life? And maybe most importantly, what am I willing to change to make that goal possible? I don't want you to hear me say, you have to reorganize your entire life around color guard and make fitness your whole personality. You don't need to do that. But you also can't expect a significant change in your performance while making the exact same decisions you've always made. At some point, the goal has to be important enough that your choices start reflecting it. And that's where these pillars come in. The pillars I'm going to walk you through aren't meant to be a checklist of things you have to do perfectly all the time. They're the different areas of physical preparation that I think contribute to a more well-rounded color guard performer. Strength training, mobility, conditioning, recovery, and all of the other pieces that support what we're asking our bodies to do in rehearsal and at performances. The important thing is none of these things work well if you only do them occasionally. Again, you don't need to make fitness your entire personality. You don't need to spend every waking hour training. But if you have a specific performance goal, you have to be willing to consistently make choices that support it. And that's where I think getting really specific about your goals becomes really important. And that's really the point I want to make before I get into my plan. Being able to achieve high levels of performance isn't something you're just born with, and it's not something that happens by accident. Some people are naturally gifted. Some people pick up certain skills faster than others. But natural talent can only take you so far. At a certain point, the performer who consistently trains, recovers, takes care of their bodies, works on their weaknesses, and shows up ready to perform is going to have a huge advantage over someone who relies entirely on what comes naturally to them. Whether you're trying to make a world-class weapon line or simply just get through rehearsal without feeling like you're trying to survive it, the things you do consistently outside of rehearsal can have a huge impact on what you're able to do inside of it. So with that in mind, let's talk about the different factors that shaped my training plan, what I decided to focus on, and how I fit them into my schedule to give myself the best possible chance of meeting this goal. The first major advantage I have going into this audition isn't anything to do with my physical capabilities. It's a lifestyle stability. Looking back at my 20s, I didn't realize just how much my circumstances were affecting my performance. When I was marching back in Florida, I was a full-time college student, trying to establish a career, working inconsistent jobs, dealing with financial stress, teaching color guard for the first time, and navigating some difficult family situations, all while trying to perform on a world-class team. Like most people in their 20s, I was also just trying to figure out adulthood and who I wanted to be. So it's no surprise that I struggled to build healthy habits. I didn't have time to train consistently. I certainly wasn't meal prepping. Most days I just grabbed whatever food was convenient because I was constantly moving from one responsibility to the next. I didn't get to march drum corps. We'll open up that bag of worms on another video. When I did have free time, I'd maybe do a YouTube workout video in my room or head over to my school's basketball gym to get some extra practice in at 1 a.m. Was I working hard? Absolutely. Was I training intelligently? Not really. The biggest problem wasn't my motivation, it was just my capacity. There simply weren't enough hours in the day to train, recover, sleep, eat well, and still keep up with everything else I had committed to. Looking back, I did make it through those seasons, but I know I wasn't giving my body what it needed to be able to perform at its full potential. And I probably could have been a stronger performer for my team had I been able to take care of myself better. When I moved to Georgia, some things became a lot more manageable just because I didn't have school to worry about. But I had a whole new set of responsibilities to take its place. I was living on my own for the first time, struggling financially still, trying to find a career, finding a new community, and marching a new winter guard. It was really exciting, but it wasn't exactly the stable environment I have today. It's really only been the past few years that everything started to come together for me. I found a career I genuinely enjoy, I've developed a clearer sense of purpose for my life, I have a much better support system, and I've created routines for myself that allow me to consistently invest in my own health and well-being and my performance in a healthier way. That's probably the biggest advantage I have going for me compared to the last time I auditioned. I have a work schedule that doesn't leave me emotionally exhausted every evening. I teach color guard at the same school that I work, so I'm no longer spending hours and hours driving from school or work to my instructor job like I used to. I have summers and school breaks off that allows me time to just rest and relax and focus on other projects I'm trying to do. Now that stability doesn't guarantee me success, but it gives me the opportunity to be consistent. And consistency is what creates progress. One of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is that your training isn't just the working out and the spinning you do. It's also the life you live that allows for those workouts and spinning sessions to happen consistently. It's not something I had for myself growing up in my 20s back home, but it is something I'm incredibly grateful for myself in my 30s. The second major advantage I have is that I feel like I finally know how to train myself correctly. When I was younger, I didn't have access to a commercial gym. And even if I did, I wouldn't know what to do when I got there. Most of my training consisted of just following YouTube videos, doing extra spins in my yard when I had time, going for runs in my neighborhood and thinking that that was enough to get to where I needed to be. I wasn't following a structured program really. I didn't understand progressive overload, exercise selection, or how to build the strength for the specific demands of color guard. So when we'd get to rehearsal and we'd be learning new choreo or new skills, it was really difficult for me to understand why I wasn't achieving as well as my peers. I wasn't lazy, I just didn't have the knowledge that I needed. And today, that is a completely different story. I'm a CPT, which is a certified personal trainer, so I have the understanding of how to build an all-around training program that supports the goals I'm working towards. Instead of just randomly choosing exercises, every workout has a purpose. I know when to push harder in my workouts or when to reduce my load to protect myself. I know how to apply proper form and technique. And I know how to structure my workouts so that I'm actually progressing instead of running myself into the ground. I also now have access to a commercial gym and other resources that make that training much more possible. I have access to a lot of instructor-led classes that I've taken advantage of this summer. And on the days that I'm not taking class, I have everything I need to strength train and work with all kinds of machines and free weights. Having that variety allows me to choose the best tool for my goal, rather than trying to make one type of training do everything. Just as importantly, I understand nutrition and recovery in a way that I simply wouldn't have had a way to know when I was younger. I know how to fuel my body for brief periods of exercise, how to support my body with better nutrition in between workout sessions, how to count my macros and make sure I'm receiving the right kind of nutrients every day, and how all of those pieces fit together instead of thinking of it as separate topics. It's not just that I have a gym membership, though that is an advantage for sure, but not everyone has access to one and not everyone needs one. What's really helping me is just having the knowledge of how to use those resources that are available to me effectively. And that's kind of the whole point that I'm doing this series. I want to bring that knowledge to you. We may all have different bodies that need different things to be successful, but I want performers to have access to the why behind their training. My goal is for you to follow what I can provide and feel empowered to make informed choices on your training, and use that to find what works best for your body and what you need to achieve your goals. The third advantage I have today is something that's much harder to measure, but I believe it's one of the biggest factors to my success. I have a supportive environment. When I was younger, I had amazing friends in color guard, but my life outside of rehearsal wasn't very stable. I won't go into all the details, but growing up in a household that often felt hostile and unpredictable meant I had to spend a lot of time and energy just trying to stay emotionally afloat. And when you're constantly living on edge and being criticized for every little detail about yourself, it affects a lot more than just your mental health. It affects your sleep, your stress levels, your ability to recover, and your capacity to focus on being a better performer. It affects the physicality of your body in ways you don't realize until you're older. You live with a lot of doubt and shame about who you are, and when you're constantly being scrutinized like that, you have a lot of issues with learning to grow up and how to navigate through life. So my life today feels completely different from that. My husband is my family now, and he has created a home with me that feels safe and encouraging and genuinely supportive. He's the first person to celebrate my wins, remind me what I'm capable of when I'm doubting myself, and he asks me how he can help me achieve my goal and doesn't question why I'm even pursuing it in the first place. We're true partners. We share the responsibility of running our home, we support each other's ambitions, and I never feel like I have to justify caring deeply about something that's important to me. The same is true in color guard. Being part of a healthy team environment makes me want to work harder. It makes me want to show up prepared, contribute as much as I can, and be someone that my teammates can rely on. If you're fortunate enough to have people in your life that encourage your goals, please appreciate them. If you're in a team culture that works on building each other up and not tearing each other down, don't take that for granted. Those environments are really powerful, not just in itself, but for your goals and for you to reach your dreams. The last advantage I have is that even though I haven't performed in 5 years, I never really left color guard. Over these 5 years, I've continued investing in my development in the activity, just in different ways. I've stayed physically active. Although my training has been geared more towards just general fitness and health and aesthetics, and not really for preparing for a world-class audition. But I've also been taking dance classes for the better part of the last year to help with my instruction. So movement has remained a consistent part of my life. I'm not having to relearn what it feels like to dance again, or start building those habits from scratch, which is what most people in my situation might find themselves having to struggle with. I've also spent these past 5 years teaching and still being in the color guard space. This past season, I taught the Paramount A/Open Guard. I'm currently on staff with a local DCI all-age corps, and I've continued teaching at multiple high schools in the area as well. One of the unexpected benefits of teaching is it's made me much more analytical about technique and skill. When you're responsible for helping someone else improve, you really have to understand why something works. You have to be able to explain every detail about a toss, or timing, or body positions and release points. Now that I've been spinning for myself again, I find myself coaching myself the way I would for my students, and giving myself lots of feedback as I work through getting my consistency back and learning new skills. I've also stayed involved behind the scenes as well, through my work with Paramount's admin team and being part of the WGI DE&I committee. I've gained a much broader understanding of the activity beyond simply being a performer. Those experiences have shaped how I think about color guard, leadership, education, and the kind of career I want to pursue in the activity. Because of all of that, walking into auditions doesn't feel like it's going to be like I'm stepping into an unfamiliar world. It still feels intimidating and challenging and a little terrifying, but I'm returning to a community that I've been investing in for the past 5 years. I still have relationships with current performers and staff and friends within the activity, and that makes this process feel a lot less like starting over and more like I'm just stepping back into a familiar place. Now, I know I just talked about all the advantages I have as an older performer, but I don't want to call this next section disadvantages, so I'm going to call them constraints. I have a few personal constraints that are going to influence how I prepare for this audition. These probably won't be the same constraints you have, and that's okay. The point isn't to compare circumstances. It's to recognize that every performer has variables they'll need to account for when preparing for a season. The first one is my injury history. I just turned 33 this summer, and while my age itself isn't something I'm worried about, it does mean I have to be much more intentional about how I prepare for my body compared to when I did in my 20s. For me, that starts with this old neck-shoulder injury that I've been dealing with for about 10 years. Last year, I finally sought professional help and went to a physical therapist for it. We never really landed on one definitive diagnosis for what causes these really painful flare-ups and nerve strains for me, but we did figure out some best practices to manage it. This pain used to interfere with my everyday life. It would leave me immobile, in constant pain, and it hindered a lot of my ability to move and spin for quite a while. It is dramatically better now, and that's because I stopped trying to figure it out on my own or ignore it and ask someone with the expertise I needed to help me. That doesn't mean my injury has disappeared. It does still flare up from time to time, but I do have better tools and resources available to me to help me navigate life with it. Some of those tools are simply following through with a proper warm-up before I work out. It's not really optional for anyone, but for me specifically. If I want to guarantee a much less chance of a flare-up happening, I have to follow through with my extensive warm-up before doing anything. Same thing with doing my mobility work and rehab exercises. They're both an extremely important part of my training, but I still just don't always feel like doing it. But following through with what my doctor has told me has helped me lessen my symptoms a lot this year. So I'm really hoping that by following through on this, it doesn't become an issue when it comes time to audition. One of the biggest lessons I hope you take from this is, if something doesn't feel right, genuinely doesn't feel right, don't convince yourself that pain is part of the process or that it's weakness leaving the body. You know your body best. You know when something is wrong or isn't working the way it's supposed to. Go get it evaluated by a medical professional. Find someone who listens to you, takes your concerns seriously, and actually helps you understand what is going on with your body and gives you access to do something about it. Not every jammed thumb or bruise needs to sit out a rehearsal, but as we're navigating building performers into athletes, there are going to be bumps along the way, and we as instructors and performers need to know when to advocate for ourselves into receiving proper medical help. The second constraint of mine is something that I actually think is kind of exciting. Color guard has continued to evolve well past what it was when I marched. The level of performance, athleticism, and equipment vocabulary has continued to rise and rise and rise and rise, and I genuinely love seeing where the activity is headed. But I'd be lying if I said that wasn't intimidating. Today's performers are doing skills that simply weren't a thing when I was marching. So one of the things I've been working through is the mental side of that progression. I've never been someone who naturally enjoys taking risks. I'm not the person who sees a trick on TikTok and thinks it's so cool I have to try it. Newer equipment vocabulary is challenging for me, not because I don't think it's awesome or showcases the amazing abilities of performers in our activity, but that level of confidence for it just doesn't come naturally to me. And I find myself immediately trying to talk myself out of attempting tricks or tosses when it's a new concept. So that has also become an important part of my training. Not just becoming physically capable of attempting those skills, but becoming mentally willing to commit to them. We'll come back to that later because it has become one of the pillars that is a major focus of this training plan for myself. Now, I share these constraints not to give excuses. They're simply realities for me that I can't ignore and I need to accommodate for when it comes to making my training plan. Someone watching this who's 18 years old probably doesn't need to do that much for injury rehabilitation. Someone else might not struggle with being afraid of their equipment at all, but they may still have different obstacles to work through. Like maybe movement is a struggle for them, or maybe they have a hard time being consistent with technique. And that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make. The best training plans aren't ones that are built around what works for everyone. They're built around what you need in order to be successful. Now that I've explained the circumstances I'm working with, I want to talk about the actual framework behind my training plan. When I think about preparing for color guard at a high level, I don't think about one single workout, one skill, or one area of improvement that will suddenly make someone a better performer. A good, strong performer is the result of multiple systems working together. You can be incredibly strong, but if you don't have the mobility to move through those various positions, that's going to limit you. You can have amazing equipment skills, but if you don't have the endurance to continuously perform those moves full out, that's going to affect your performance. You can be physically strong and prepared, but if you aren't recovering properly, fueling yourself, or taking care of your mental health, eventually your body will not be able to sustain what you're asking it to do, and that can lead to injuries or other serious issues down the line. So when I think of the necessities that a performer in color guard needs in order to be successful, these are the pillars that I trained that around. The foundation: strength training, mobility and flexibility, cardiovascular endurance. The performance skills: dance training, equipment technique and skills. The sustainability: recovery, including nutrition, mental health and wellness, injury rehabilitation. These are the areas I'm focusing on as part of my training. Not every performer will need the exact same amount of focus in every category. Your strengths and weaknesses are going to be different than mine. You might need more overall strength building. Maybe your biggest setback is your mobility. Maybe you've avoided dance training. Maybe you've never learned how to structure your recovery and now you're seeing how that's becoming an issue from neglecting it for so long. No matter how behind you may feel or how overwhelming this list might look to you, we are not trying to perfect every single category overnight. The goal is to identify what will have the biggest impact on your performance and building a routine that works on that consistency. I also like organizing it through these pillars because if you're like me, you might feel like you're doing a lot, but that you could always be doing more. And your version of more might be doing an extreme amount of exercises, incorrectly and underfueled, which will not lead to any growth actually being made. That way of thinking didn't help me at all. It just left me frustrated and overwhelmed and ultimately stuck because I wasn't actually making any meaningful progress. I like using these pillars because they help me focus on the areas that I feel are the most important and are going to help me feel the most prepared for my audition. So with that, let's talk about how we can properly implement these pillars into a realistic schedule. This was my weekly training structure for the summer and how I incorporated each of these pillars into my schedule. Again, I want to emphasize that this is not a template that everyone needs to copy exactly. Your schedule, your goals, your responsibilities are going to be different than mine. There are definitely areas that I'm prioritizing more heavily because they're things I need to improve on or get back into practice with. But you might already have those built into your own routine, or you might have completely different areas than me that need more attention. The purpose of showing you this is to give you an example of what a balanced, realistic training week can look like when you're trying to develop as a color guard performer while still living a normal life with adult responsibilities. So for Monday, I start my week off with a class at my gym, and then I have a dance class in the evening. This day is really focused on movement quality, body awareness, control, and flexibility. It gives me an opportunity to work on the performance side of my training while also building strength and stability through movement. I also really enjoyed this class as it takes less effort for me to be able to just get to the gym, show up, and have fun. My instructor makes it really fun and engaging, and it's a really great playlist, and I've started to even make friends in this class, so I really enjoy going to this one now that I have the time to. Tuesday is when I work on my lower body strength, and then I follow that off with a heavy spinning day. This is one of my higher intensity days because I'm combining strength work with equipment work. I specifically target my lower body in the morning so I don't overexert my upper body, which is needed for when I spin later. The last thing I want to do is overexert my upper body and bring myself to have another flare-up in my shoulder and my neck. Wednesday is an intentional recovery and maintenance day. I go for a walk in the morning, then use the day to catch up on my adult responsibilities, cleaning, errands, and anything else that keeps my life organized and stress-free. Then I'll do a workout class in the evening just to finish on a strong note and make sure I have everything I need for Spin Strong done. Thursday is my core training day, followed by another spin session in the evening. Core strength is incredibly important for color guard because so much of our movement relies on controlling our bodies through rotation, changing positions, absorbing force, and maintaining posture while manipulating equipment. So I think it's important, while I have the time, to structure a whole day just on this one part of my body. Friday is my upper body strength day, and I pair it usually with a moderate run. This day focuses on building the strength and endurance I need for spinning, while also developing my cardiovascular base. Depending on my schedule, I'll either go to a dance class or spend time teaching that night at CV, or use this as another night for free time if I need to. It just depends on what I can realistically commit to that day. My Saturdays have been a little different this summer because I've gone to a few clinics and have had to teach on those days as well. If I have to teach that day, or if I go to a clinic, then my priority is usually just my rehabilitation work in the morning and making sure I get a good stretch in at night. This is another example of why your plan has to fit your actual life. A training schedule only works if it can adapt when your responsibilities change. If I was waking up super early to get into the gym before rehearsal, I wouldn't be getting enough sleep, or I would be exhausted before the end of the day, and I wouldn't be able to teach at my best. So taking this day to focus on my students or taking the time to work on my technique and dance didn't also need to be paired with a workout as well. Sundays are my reset days. Depending on the week, I'll either catch up on things around the house, spend time with family, or alternate that with going to a hot yoga class at my gym. This is also when I meal prep and plan for the upcoming week, and I don't feel guilty taking time away from the gym to prioritize those things. Because recovery isn't time away from training. Recovery is a part of training. And if I don't have time set during the week to work on these things, then I will be stressing about them later, which doesn't help me to show progress. Outside of these larger training sessions, I also have smaller sessions that happen during the week. I do my rehabilitation exercises when I wake up in the morning as I'm getting ready. I also stretch after every workout. Sometimes it's immediately after I'm done with my workout, or sometimes I'll do a longer cool down at the gym and then do a stretching and mobility routine after I come home and have had a hot shower. It just depends how I feel that day, but I do stretch every day. Rehabilitation exercises, stretching, cool downs, those things may not seem as exciting as like a training session or learning a really new hard skill, but they are what keep me consistent and injury-free. So it is something that I have to do every single day. The schedule is also not going to stay exactly the same leading up to auditions. When fall begins and I get back to a busier work schedule and I have to worry about my students' rehearsals and other responsibilities, I'll be increasing the intensity of this plan. I'll still be continuing my rehabilitation work and my stretches, but I'll be shifting my workout to focus more on things like plyometrics. I'll have more specific endurance training, and I'll be making sure my exercises will match the demands of what will be asked at auditions. Now, training for an audition is not the same plan I would use if I was trying to maintain a workout during the season. Both require different approaches and have different goals, which can really dramatically differentiate what those two workouts look like. I'll talk more about training phases in a future video because I think it is something more instructors and more performers need to be aware of. But for now, that's what my summer training looked like, and that's how I built all of those pillars into my week. This past year before the summer, my gym routine was much more inconsistent. I was getting sick frequently this past winter. Work was really stressful. I wasn't sleeping well. My teaching schedule was very busy, and by this point I also wasn't planning on auditioning. My priorities were different. So I was taking more rest days when I felt I needed to, and making choices based on what I realistically had capacity for at the time. Once I decided to audition, my priorities shifted. Like I said before, one of the biggest advantages I have for myself this summer is that I have a lot of time away from working and teaching throughout the week. I'm not trying to squeeze an entire workout into a 1-hour window I have before I have to leave for my job. I have the time now to not feel rushed going to the gym. I can take as much time as I need for my warm-up and take my time doing my exercises and recovering after. That extra time has allowed me to slowly progress back into the gym and have a more consistent routine. Now, if you're younger or you're new to this, you might be thinking, that's it? Why aren't you in the gym 24/7? Why aren't you spinning more? You should be spinning at least 2 hours a day outside. Yeah, and maybe that's what you can do, and maybe that's what can set you up for success. But for me, that's just not realistic. Maybe if you have all your meals cooked for you and all your laundry done for you, and your house taken care of by someone else, you have time to only focus on spinning and working out and color guard. But I have a lot of other things on my plate outside of just preparing for auditions. And if I want to preserve all of my responsibilities that will still be there for me after auditions are over, and take care of my mental health, then this version, the one where I'm working at about a 70 to 80% intensity, more frequently throughout the week, is what's best for me and my body. When I originally filmed this, I was 5 weeks into this training plan, and I hadn't missed a single workout. And for me, that's what's going to set me up to be prepared for these next few weeks and for auditions coming up. For my strength training workouts, I focused on hitting the major muscle groups with about 6 to 7 exercises per session. By the time this video is posted, I will have been following that plan pretty consistently, and I can already see a huge difference in how I was before compared to how I am now. Not just in the amount of weight I can lift, but in my overall confidence and my ability at the gym. Now, I think this is really important to remember when it comes to strength training. Getting stronger doesn't always mean looking stronger or leaner or more tone or in shape. Your physical appearance is influenced by genetics, body composition, nutrition, and a whole lot of other factors. And visible changes in your body can take a long time. Social media makes it really easy to forget that a lot of the physiques that we see online are the results of years of training, not just a few months of consistency. So even if when I look in the mirror, I don't see a drastic change in my physique, that doesn't mean my training isn't working. If I'm lifting more weight and controlling movements better, feeling more stable, and becoming more confident in my body and what it can do, those are signs that I'm getting stronger. Don't let the mirror be the only thing that you use to measure your progress. For my mobility and flexibility training, I use an app called Stretch It. Normally, I don't like to promote things or products that cost money because I know a lot of people can't always afford them. But this is something that I've genuinely used for years, and I find it to be really, really valuable. The reason flexibility and mobility is such an important part of my routine is because it isn't just something you have or you don't have. It's a skill. Like strength endurance, equipment technique, mobility and flexibility are things that you have to consistently work on in order to get better at them. As we get older, our bodies will naturally change. So our muscles, our connective tissues, our joints, they don't always maintain the same level of movement they had when we were younger, unless we continue to work on them. For me, mobility was something that I wanted to maintain even after I stopped performing, because I knew how important it was to my movement quality, injury prevention, and overall health. Plus, I still wanted to be able to demonstrate movement for my students and train them as well. This Stretch It app has been really helpful because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of that process. There are hundreds of classes available that focus on all types of goals, whether that's a morning mobility routine, recovering after running, improving specific ranges of motion, or working towards skills like your splits or your back bends. One of the features I really like is that you can create a customizable plan based on your goals, your schedule, and your current ability level. For example, I put that one of my goals was improving my front and middle splits. I can tell the app how many days I can commit to stretching every day and for how long. And so it created a progression plan for me based on that. I personally pay for my membership, which is about $20 a month, and I'm really happy with it. But you absolutely do not need this specific app to improve your mobility. There are tons of free resources online, like YouTube follow-along videos that can be really effective. The biggest thing is learning how to approach mobility and flexibility training correctly. If you're brand new to stretching or aren't very flexible, Forcing yourself into advanced positions is not going to help you progress quicker. It can actually lead to a lot of frustration and injury. Flexibility improvements depend on a lot of different factors, like your anatomy, your training history, your consistency, and how safely your body can progress. So be cautious of programs that promise getting you your splits in 2 weeks. Anything that tries to force your body into a position that it's not ready for is not something I recommend. The goal is to consistently train your range of motion so your body becomes more capable, more resilient, and better prepared for the demands of what color guard asks of us. Cardiovascular endurance is an important part of my training, but it's not that high of a priority on my list right now. And I want to clarify what I mean by that. It doesn't mean I don't do cardio. I run maybe 1 or 2 times a week. But cardio also shows up in a lot of different areas of my training. My strength workouts increase my cardiovascular demand. My workout classes challenge my endurance. Even something as simple as my Wednesday morning walks contributes to my aerobic capacity. So cardio isn't just something that happens when you put on your running shoes. But I know at this time a lot of people might be putting more focus on that versus strength training or mobility. That cardiovascular endurance and being able to make it through to the end of the show doesn't really need to be as important of a factor until you're actually in your season. Dance training is another major piece of preparation because color guard at its core is a movement art. I'm really fortunate that I have access to this amazing dance studio in Marietta that has a variety of classes to offer. I've been taking classes there for a little over a year, and it has made a huge difference in how I stay connected to my movement. Right now, I regularly take an adult ballet class, and it's been incredibly valuable for me with things like my body awareness, alignment, balance, control, and my lines. I really like ballet. It fits more into the style that I like to move in and that I like to teach in. But ballet is not the epicenter of dance. It is not the baseline for all movement that exists. If you're preparing to audition for a specific team, then I would recommend learning as much as you can about what their highest values are and their movement program. Attending their clinics, taking classes taught by their staff, and getting feedback directly from their instructors can be incredibly helpful. Because every team has a different movement style and expectation. But if you're simply trying to just become a better dancer, then the best dance training is the one that helps you grow. For some people that might be ballet. For others that might be contemporary or jazz or modern or hip hop even, or any other style that challenges them in a unique way. The biggest thing is finding ways that will intentionally develop your movement instead of assuming that it will just improve because you're doing color guard. One thing I've adjusted for during this process is that I've actually been creating movement goals for myself. Before I stopped marching, I had this weird mindset where if I didn't think I was strong enough to complete the movement, then I shouldn't be practicing it yet. It was like I had to earn the right to practice harder dance skills, which sounds absolutely ridiculous when I say it out loud. So now instead of taking classes and just hoping I'll get better at those different tricks and skills that they'll ask of me at auditions, I'm identifying different specific skills that I want to develop. And I'm intentionally making time to work on them. If taking in-person classes isn't realistic for you, I know they can be expensive at some studios. There are a lot of amazing online resources available as well. I'll link some different dance channels and videos I've followed along with down in the description below. But the biggest thing I want you to worry about is just consistency and intentionality behind your movement practice. Dance is not something that you just check off a list or a combination you remember. It's a lifelong skill that continues to develop every time you move. And as much as we love spinning our flags and rifles and sabers, we need to make sure that we're still giving the right amount of time, focus, and attention to our movement to help develop our craft. Now, obviously, if you want to be good at color guard, you have to do some color guard. Being physically prepared matters, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to perform the skill. One of my biggest priorities these past few weeks has been not just building my skill back, but being able to do it through endurance. I mentioned earlier in my schedule that I have my spin sessions about twice a week. But that's not the only time I spin. Outside of those longer sessions, I still try to spin about 20 to 30 minutes a day. Whether that's right after dinner when it's a little cooler outside, or before I go to the gym, I want to have my equipment in my hands at least once a day. I pick a piece of equipment, I warm up on it, I go up my toss ladder, and then I'll work on a new skill with it. This has been a slower process for me because I'm also managing my shoulder and my neck injury, while also trying to build my way back into spinning after a long time not doing it. So I am being intentional about how I increase my volume and making sure that I don't rush the process. And that's been really rewarding because I've already seen some of my skills come back that I thought I lost years ago, and even a couple new skills that I didn't think I'd get so fast. Not every session is perfect. I have a lot of bad habits to iron out, and 30 minutes usually isn't enough time to work on that. But the biggest thing I can do right now is continue showing up. Once I transition out of my summer schedule and feel more confident in my technique, and continue building my endurance, I'll start incorporating more choreography and creating my own pieces and learning other people's choreography, and continue working towards more advanced skills. You never know what skills you're going to need in your toolkit when you're auditioning for a world-class group. And that will also be something I'll share in a future video for those interested in that process. But for right now, my focus is simple. Build the technique, build the consistency, and build the confidence to trust the work that I've been putting in will be there for me when I need it to be. The next pillar is recovery. I think recovery is one of the most misunderstood aspects of our physical preparation because a lot of people think recovery means doing nothing. It doesn't. Recovery is everything you do that allows your body to adapt to the work you've asked it to do. One of the biggest things I want people to understand is that you don't actually get stronger during your workout. The workout is the stimulus. Your body adapts, your muscles get bigger, you get stronger during recovery. So I focus on my recovery immediately after I finish working out. That usually means taking the time to cool down or stretch after my workout session is done. I try to bring my heart rate back down and give my body a chance to transition out of that high intensity state. Sleep is another huge part of your recovery. I know getting 8 hours of sleep isn't always realistic, especially during the summer, when you're up late or you're balancing school and work, life, rehearsals, everything else. But if you're consistently sacrificing sleep, then you're also sacrificing your body's ability to recover, adapt, and perform at its best. Sleep is when so much of your body's recovery actually happens. It's when your body repairs tissue, supports muscle growth, integrates motor learning, and prepares you to be able to train again the next day. So if you're putting in all this work at the gym and at rehearsal, but you're only sleeping like 4 or 5 hours a night, then you're making it much harder for your body to be able to benefit from the effort you're putting in. Recovery also means listening to your body. Every ache doesn't mean you should stop training, but not every ache should just be ignored either. Learning the difference between normal fatigue and signs that your body needs more attention is part of becoming a stronger athlete. The next 3 areas we're going to talk about, nutrition, mental health and wellness, and injury rehabilitation, are all major parts of recovery as well. And I think they each deserve their own conversation because they become some of my biggest priorities this summer. Nutrition is probably the pillar that looks the most different from person to person. There isn't one meal plan or one diet that's perfect for every performer because our bodies, schedules, dietary needs, and goals are all different. If you're asking your body to perform at a high level, you have to give it the resources to do that. For me, nutrition isn't about trying to look a certain way. It's about fueling my body to help it perform the way I want it to. That's been a really important mindset shift for me. When I was younger, so much of the fitness advice aimed at young women was just about getting smaller. Every article, every magazine, every social media post was about eating less, cutting calories, or changing your body to fit a certain image. There was almost no conversation about fueling your body for athletic performance. And that's the approach I want to encourage instead. I never want one of my students or anyone watching these videos to feel like their value as a performer is tied to what they look like. Sure, you can think having certain physical qualities might make some aspects of color guard easier, but that is very different from saying that your worth or your potential or your success is determined by your appearance. So instead of chasing a number on a scale, I'm focusing on supporting the work that I'm asking my body to do. That means eating enough protein to support muscle growth and recovery, making sure I'm getting carbohydrates to fuel my training, and including healthy fats, fibers, vitamins, and minerals that support my overall health. And because it's summer in Georgia and I'm spending a lot of time outside, hydration and electrolytes are a huge part of that as well. Do I still eat food out at restaurants and have a sweet treat sometimes? Absolutely. I'm not trying to eliminate foods I enjoy or create a bunch of unnecessary food rules. My training plan for nutrition basically just consists of making the right choices that help support my training more often than making choices that don't. The last pillar I want to talk about before injury rehabilitation is mental health and wellness. And I want to clarify what I mean by that. I'm not talking about pretending everything is fine all the time or acting like confidence will just magically appear one day. I'm talking about intentionally building the habits and mindset that will allow me to perform at my best. For me, that breaks it down into 3 areas: confidence, performance mindset, and stress management. When people think about training for color guard, they probably really only think about workouts and stretching and spinning. But the reality is that your mind shows up to rehearsal just as much as your body does. So if your confidence disappears after one drop, or if you spend rehearsals comparing yourself to everyone around you, or if you're constantly feeling overwhelmed and burned out and carrying the stress from every other part of your life, those things affect your performance just as much as your physical preparation. My biggest concern going into auditions isn't if I'll be physically prepared, it's if I'll feel prepared. I've always had this tendency where I can execute something really well in practice, but the moment someone starts watching or a camera turns on, I suddenly start second-guessing myself and making mistakes on things I know I can do. I get really in my head and have a hard time not listening to that inner critic telling me not to mess up. I don't want that to be the story this time. So instead of trying to just tell myself I'm confident, I'm trying to build the confidence. And confidence like that comes from keeping promises to myself. If I say I'm going to the gym, I go. If I say I'm going to go spin, I go. If I tell myself I'm going to do my rehabilitation exercises, I do them. Every time I follow through on a promise I make to myself, I collect more and more evidence that I can trust myself. So that's where I want my confidence to come from. Not confidence based on just hoping for the best, but confidence that comes from all the preparation that I did to prepare for that moment. This next area I've been working on with that is my performance mindset. And I don't just mean practicing how I want to perform. I mean practicing how I think while I'm performing and while I'm learning. One of the things I've had to work on the most throughout this process is how I react to my mistakes. I can be really hard on myself when I'm learning something new. I'll miss a toss or struggle with a skill, and my brain can very quickly turn that one mistake into something much bigger than it is. Instead of thinking, okay, that didn't work, let's figure out why, I can start thinking, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I don't even need to be trying to work on this. Maybe I'm never going to be able to get this. And that is where I've had to change how I approach my practice. Because when I start judging myself for every little mistake, I stop learning from the mistake. I immediately feel shame for even attempting something that's hard. And my brain tells me I am not worthy of attempting that anymore. So I've been working on trying to make my mistakes feel more informational and not evidence that I'm failing. Every rep is giving me something. Maybe my release point was off. Maybe I didn't give the toss enough push. Maybe I'm not locking my dip. Maybe I'm not engaging the right muscles. Maybe I'm tired and my fatigue is starting to set in. Whatever the reason is, that information is useful because it's something that I can apply for the very next rep. And I think that shift has made a huge difference in how I practice. I still get frustrated. I still have moments where I want to throw my equipment across the room, but I'm getting a lot better at separating I made a mistake from I'm bad at this. Because those are 2 completely different things. A mistake is something I can learn from. It doesn't have to be judgment about my ability or my talent or whether or not I belong there. Every mistake can be adjusted and fixed to what it needs to be. And the more I can approach my training that way, the more productive and the more enjoyable it is. Another mindset I've been trying to work on is my comparison to other people. Comparison isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it can show you what's possible, exposes areas where you want to improve, or it can inspire you to work harder. The problem is when comparing yourself to others, much like making mistakes, stops being informative and starts becoming judgmental. Throughout my performing career, I spent a lot of time looking around the room and measuring my worth against everyone else. I would be so upset with myself for not being as talented as someone else or not being able to do what someone else can do. And I would get so jealous and so angry at myself. But none of those thoughts actually helped me be a better performer. They just distracted me from the one thing that was in my control, my preparation. The truth is, no matter who you are, there will always be someone who learns faster, is stronger, more talented, has more experience, or can make something look even more effortless than you can. But none of that changes what I need to work on today. Comparison can't tell me what my weakest skill is. It can't tell me whether I practice consistently this week. It can't tell me if I've been taking care of my body or putting in that intentional work outside of rehearsal. Only my own habits can answer those questions. Comparing yourself to others is not going to help you be successful. And I have to remember that going into these auditions with people who've probably not taken 5-year breaks from spinning. If I spend all my time and all my energy deciding ahead of time that someone else is more talented than me or they're more deserving, then I've already taken myself out of the running. So this time I'm choosing a different approach. I'm choosing to trust the process, keep showing up, and let my preparation speak for itself. Whether I earn a contract or not, I'll know that I gave myself the opportunity to find out what I was capable of instead of just deciding my outcome before I even tried. And I think that's a much healthier way of measuring success, not just in color guard, but, in anything worth pursuing. The last piece I've been focusing on is managing my stress when it comes to having a large plate of responsibilities and goals. I wish I could just move away for the next 2 months and only worry about spinning and resting and working out and preparing for color guard. And when you're preparing for something like an audition, it's really easy to get into that mindset that every single hour must be used preparing yourself for it. But that's not real life. I still have a career. I still teach. I still run Spin Strong. I still have a home to take care of and friends I want to spend time with, errands to run, projects to finish, and responsibilities that exist completely outside of color guard. And if I ignore all of those things in the name of training, they don't just disappear. They just become sources of stress that weigh on me while I'm practicing or when I'm at auditions or at rehearsal. Taking care of those responsibilities isn't time taking away from training. It's part of what allows me to train well. When my house is reasonably cleaned, my meals are planned, my work is caught up, and the other important parts of my life have been given the attention they need, I can walk into practice with a much clearer mind. I can focus on performing instead of thinking about all the things that are going to be waiting for me when I get home. The last piece of the sustainability for me has been my injury rehabilitation. I've talked about my injuries and the rehab process I needed earlier in this video, so I won't go too far into detail with that again, but I just want to reiterate how important that has been in my training. For me, rehab isn't something I do just when something hurts. It's become part of how I maintain my body so that I can continue training and performing and doing this activity for a long time. That means addressing the things that need attention, strengthening the areas that have been vulnerable in the past, and actually listening when my body tells me that something needs to change. I think that's an important part of sustainability that a lot of performers overlook. The goal isn't just to become a better performer today. It's to build a body that can keep performing tomorrow and the next season and the season after that. And sometimes that means knowing when to push or when to modify, and when to get help instead of just working through everything on your own. It can be a lot to continuously show up and commit to a goal like this, and there are definitely days where I don't feel like doing it. I don't plan on marching this year if I were to earn a contract, so I really am just going for fun and to show others that you can do it too. With the right training and the right methods being applied, you can achieve your color guard goals. You can get to a level that you desire to be at. You can do the skills you want to do. You just have to show up. And that consistency is the thing I'm focusing the most on in this process. So to keep myself accountable, I'm going to link my Google Doc that I use to actually monitor my workouts. So you can see exactly what I've been working on this summer. Every exercise, the volume I did of it, and the weight that I used. That way you can follow along and also help keep me accountable as well. Something else I want to acknowledge is that there is a lot of privilege in being able to sacrifice so much time and attention to something like this. I have a job that allows me this flexibility, the supportive environment, access to a ton of resources, and all the experiences I've had that has led me up to this point. If you want to achieve a goal like marching an independent world-class organization, especially if you were like me and you really didn't have the physical capabilities or the natural talent to do well, you have to be intentional about creating opportunities for yourself to grow and for you to become the performer you want. The opportunity doesn't just appear. The skills just don't magically develop. You have to build them from the ground up. Now, I want to be very clear, this process is not a guarantee that you will receive the desired outcome you want. I'm working through the experience and the knowledge that I have, and there is no guarantee that it will work out for me either. But what I hope to achieve from this goal is that Spin Strong can become a better resource for performers who are looking to grow their skills and need a place to start. I want this to be a place where performers can find reliable information, structured training, and guidance from someone who understands both sides of the activity, being a performer and understanding what it takes to train performers. There are many resources out there that provide general fitness advice and performance help, but my goal is to create something specific to the demands of color guard and to the performers who dedicate themselves to this activity. I may not be the most talented performer to ever step onto the UD arena floor, but I do have experience, I do have knowledge, and I have spent years learning how to help performers become stronger, healthier, and more prepared for their journeys. And if you're willing to stick with me through to the end of the series, we'll get to see just how far intentional preparation can get us. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'm really excited to keep deep diving into this journey with you, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to work on this goal as auditions are coming up. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss our next video, where I will answer a couple of questions I've gotten the past few weeks about the series and can hopefully give you some more insight into your own preparation for auditions. You can also follow us on Instagram and on TikTok at spinstrong_official, where we can help you spin your strongest. Bye.